I think that being understood is more intimate than being loved. And even though this isn't always true, it is often true, especially when love becomes a projection. And people say, I love you, when what they really mean is, I love the idea of you that I've already constructed in my head. That version is rarely accurate and is often shaped by desire, timing, and personal narrative, or by what the other person represents more than what they are. Being understood resists that. It doesn't rely on fantasy, it requires attention, pattern recognition, and the ability to see clearly. I think being understood also means that someone has moved beyond your surface. They've really mapped the way that you think and the structure of your sentences and the logic behind your contradictions. They're not reacting to what you say, they're tracking what you mean. That experience is more rare than love and more invasive, because to be loved, you can perform. You can offer a version of yourself shaped by what you think the other person wants you to be. But to be understood, you have to be visible. And visibility, when it's real, is never fully under your control. Jean-Paul Sartre describes this in his concept of the look. It's not about being admired, it's about being perceived as an object in someone else's awareness. You're no longer just a subject moving through the world, you've become something fixed and external, subject to interpretation. For Sartre, this is where nausea begins. The discomfort doesn't begin or come from being seen, but rather the loss of sovereignty. You now exist in two versions, the one in your mind and the one in theirs. And the second version is not yours to manage. And yet most people still want to be seen. There's this basic need to be recognized and to be registered in someone else's perception with care, but that desire is always paired with the fear of being misread. And, wanting to be known and wanting to control how you're known are two completely different things, and they're constantly in tension with one another. That tension is where intimacy begins, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, more intimate kind, when someone reflects something back to you that feels accurate, not generous, not romantic, but precise. It's basically a small proof that your internal world is legible to someone else. And in the same note, Claricelispector writes from that space. Her work doesn't really aim to resolve or explain anything. It resists simplification, and she really writes thought as it unfolds. It's very unsteady and contradictory, and it's always searching for something more. She once said, I only achieve simplicity with enormous effort. And that effort is always present. She's always trying to articulate something that really resists language, something pre-verbal and almost bodily. And when it lands, it doesn't feel like explanation. It just feels like recognition. Not, I understand this, but I felt this too. And that feeling doesn't come from clarity. It really comes from contact. And I think that's what makes Clarice so unique, is just her refusal to finalize thought. She circles and contradicts and revises, and the writing becomes a record of attention, not towards solution, but towards an experience, both for her as the writer and you as the reader. And that's what intellectual intimacy is too. It's not agreement and it's not shared opinion, but it's alignment and structure. It's like someone asking a question that only makes sense if they've been thinking of you, not at you, not around you, but with you. And when that happens, it's very destabilizing, because it bypasses everything that you usually use to manage perception. And once someone sees the shape of your mind in that way, I feel like, it's like the shape of your mind before it's been polished into thought. At that point, it's extremely difficult to go back to performing. And that's why I think intellectual intimacy rarely gets framed as intimacy. It doesn't look like connection from the outside. It's something so much different. And it's different because it's often the one thing that lingers, and the sentence that you remember, or the moment that made you feel something in that way. It makes you feel recognized, not emotionally, but cognitively, and not because someone loved you, but because they noticed something true and named it. And once that happens, you don't forget it. And not because it was tender, but because it was exact and it was exactly how you felt.